Am I the a-hole for doing nothing to help my dad and stepmom while she's got cancer? My stepmom was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago. She's really sick, and she and my dad are struggling to keep everything going. They've got 4 kids together, all 8 years old and younger, and then there's me, 17 male. I don't have a good relationship with them. I did until I was 6, but then things went downhill. To give some background, my mom died when I was a baby. My dad and stepmom met when I was 2. I really loved her and was close to her, and I remember exactly when that changed. My stepmom didn't want me to spend time with my mom's parents anymore. Mom was their only child, and I was their only grandchild, so I was very special to them. My dad said he felt bad for them, or so he claimed, but he disagreed with her. I loved spending one Saturday a month with them. But my stepmom was jealous. She felt that if she was my mom, then I didn't need my grandparents on my mom's side. I remember her sitting me down and asking me to stop seeing my grandparents so I could be her son for real. She said it made her sad when I left and claimed they confused me about who my mom was because I'd say I'd had 2 moms, one I looked like and one who lived with me. I told her I didn't want her to be sad, but I loved my grandparents and didn't want to stop seeing them. Their relationship changed after that. She stopped being loving and affectionate. She stopped picking me up from school or spending time with me. If I tried to hug her, she'd push me away. If I tried to talk to her, she was cold. One Sunday, we were alone because my dad got called into work for an emergency. I wanted to spend time with her, and she told me I'd hurt her and she didn't want to spend time with me anymore. She said I wasn't her son anymore and she wasn't my mom. She tried to explain it as actions have consequences, but I didn't really understand what she meant back then. All I knew was that she didn't love me anymore. I cried over it, and my dad knew, but he stayed married to her and told me it wouldn't be so bad. After that, if my dad couldn't stay home with me, I had a sitter or went to my grandparents' house. When my dad and stepmom had their first baby, she said the baby was their first child and they were first-time parents. My dad kind of corrected her, but not really. Family photos were taken without me, and she used to get so mad at my dad when he'd bring me on family vacations with them. If anyone called me her son or called her my mom, she'd lash out at them. She always put a lot of emotion into emphasizing that I wasn't her son. She'd say I wasn't good enough for her. My dad's parents were cut off from all of us because they confronted her about it. And she said if she wasn't good enough to be my only mom, she wasn't going to pretend to be anything. I stay as busy as I can, so I'm not home a lot, and that hasn't changed since she got sick, even when she was in the hospital. I'm angry at my dad for staying with her, having kids with her, and letting her treat me the way she did. But I've accepted that he was more interested in being her husband than being my dad. I'm keeping out of the way, saving money, and planning to leave when I graduate. My dad has asked for my help a few times, and he and my stepmom have brought up how I'm doing nothing to make this easier. She told me I clearly want her to die. I rolled my eyes at her. My dad told me it was wrong to act that way and said she could seriously die. I asked why that was my problem. I told him I wasn't part of their family anymore, and she had made it clear she didn't want me to be considered anything to her. Dad told me I could be angry at them and still help because it's the right thing to do. He said my half-siblings hardly know me and that I could change that now. I told him nothing needed to change. He said I was taking my anger out on everyone at the wrong time. He emphasized how sick she is, how the doctors aren't sure treatment will work, and how she's been hospitalized twice already. He said we all need to pull together now, and I'm not helping anyone. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She made a choice a long time ago that you weren't going to be her kid or part of the family, so you get to return that energy. It is not your job to pick up the slack for her or your dad. She made her bed. She can lie in it. She spent years making it clear you weren't part of her family, and now that she's sick, she expects you to suddenly fill that role. Your dad had years to stand up for you and fix this, but he didn't. This situation isn't on you, not the a-hole. Maybe stepmom should refer back to that actions have consequences conversation. Just a thought. Not the a-hole. I hate your dad. Same. There were times I tried to stop hating him, but I just knew he put his marriage before me. And it didn't give me more stability. It just pushed me away. Why haven't you left to go live with your grandparents yet? Is your dad making you stay until you're 18? You already know your father is going to expect you to help him raise his kids when that awful woman is finally gone. Yep, my grandparents offered to take me a few times, and he said no every time. When I told him I wanted to move in with them, he still said no. And now he'll fight even harder for me to stay because he wants me to help out now that my stepmom's sick. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad he doesn't have a son anymore? I, 17 male, want to know if I was an a-hole for what I said to my dad. My mom died when I was 2. My dad was single for the next 7-ish years. He was a great dad during that time. He worked hard and still found a way to spend time with me and support my interests. We went on mini vacations together, went camping, had traditions, and he told me stories about my mom and how much she loved me. He'd remind me to always feel comforted by the fact I had 2 parents who loved me, and one was watching out for me somewhere else. He never made me feel like a burden or like I wasn't loved. When I was around 9, he became much less consistent. He showed up less, was busy more often when it was time for us to hang out, and was no longer around much when I needed him. He was still there sometimes, but sometimes became less and less frequent to the point where it was rare. A few weeks before my 11th birthday, he told me he had been dating someone who had a daughter, and had invited them to my birthday party. Afterward, they'd be moving in with us. My 11th birthday was a sore topic. I wanted a party with my friends like usual, but he insisted on a family party. He said I was grown enough to miss the friend stuff and focus on family. His girlfriend and her daughter turned out to be the reason for that decision. He wanted an excuse to introduce them to everyone. Once they moved in, my dad stopped spending any one-on-one time with me. He was all about his stepdaughter, who was 4. For a while, I asked why I couldn't join them, and he told me he needed to work on a relationship with her because she didn't have a bio dad in the picture, and he and his girlfriend wanted her to see him as her dad. He did all the things we used to do together with her. He'd even called it their special thing, which stung. On my dad's wedding day, they tried to say we had become one family unit and that 2 only children became siblings, but I didn't see it that way. I saw it as me losing my family, and I didn't want the kid who replaced me to be my sibling. I tried talking to my dad, but he was too busy. I talked to his best friend, who spoke to him for me, and my dad stopped talking to him after that. The only time he paid attention to me was when he was angry that I said no to spending time with his stepdaughter. I told him he should spend that time with her instead, since it was so important to him to build that relationship. He told me it was important for us to build a sibling relationship too. I told him I wasn't, when I wasn't even part of his new family. He told me I should ask his wife to build a mom relationship with me. I reminded him that I already had a best mom, and she was looking out for me. Anytime I had events parents normally come to, he was always doing something with his stepdaughter. One time it was an award ceremony, another time it was a game, and another time it was a talent show. Nobody showed up for me, but he always showed up for her. A few years ago, I was being bullied at school, and my principal called my dad to come and talk about it and figure out how to help me. My dad said his daughter was in the hospital and he couldn't come. The principal asked him to call back when she was out, but he didn't. My dad ignored a follow-up call too. He never even brought it up to me. Last year, my friend's dad tried talking to my dad. My dad told him to buzz off and stay out of it. I think that's when I gave up. I decided I'd keep my head down, work hard, and get out of there. I have just over a year left until I finish high school and under a year until I turn 18. I'm working on a plan to ensure I'll never need to see or speak to him again. I don't know what happened since New Year's, but my dad has started complaining about us never spending time together or talking. Maybe he misses the fighting? I don't know. Then the other night, he sat me down and said I act like a stranger and he doesn't understand why I'm so resistant to being part of the family. I told him I'm not part of the family. I said he has prioritized his stepdaughter ever since they moved in together and even before that. I said he pulled away from me, focused on her, and left me without a parent. He told me that wasn't true, so I asked him to tell me one time he put me before her. He got angry and told me I was being petulant. I told him his non-answer was his answer. He never put me first when it came to her. I told him I was done. I said, "Congrats, you have a daughter now, but you don't have a son anymore." My dad told me I don't get to deny our relationship, and how dare I hold it against him for wanting to give a fatherless girl a dad. When I didn't apologize an hour later, he told me I should just leave if I felt that way. I went to my friend's house, and now he's saying I wasn't supposed to leave and that I need to come home, apologize, and stop saying I'm not his son anymore. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. It's easier to cut off the friends that spoke up for you and get angry at you than admit he messed up big time. Unfortunately, loads of people will never be as good parents as they could because their egos get in the way. Ego will stop people from self-reflecting and changing their behavior. And apologizing. I don't think talking it out will help. He isn't listening. You can write a letter as a last attempt, if you need it and think that could help. Sometimes written words are better received. Your dad could have been a father for both his stepdaughter and you at the same time. If he did so, you probably would have had a better relationship with her too. He could have compromised to make everyone feel loved and cared for. Never forget that you were a child and it was not your fault. He should have done better for you and he didn't. I hope you managed to heal and find a support system elsewhere. And maybe have a better relationship with him if that's what you wish. Take care of yourself. I don't want a better relationship anymore. I gave up on that happening a year ago after my friend's dad tried to talk to him. That was 2 other adults who spoke up for me and he got angry at them and refused to accept it. He didn't even ask me about it either time. So our relationship is dead. I don't have a dad anymore as much as it sucks. You sound like me at the start of my cutting my dad off. You've already mourned that loss and have moved on. When he finally does pass, it will not be that big of a deal because there is not a lot left to grieve over. Your dad may choose to change for the better at some point, but you'll know that's the case when he stops trying to demand a relationship and is willing to apologize in a way that owns his failures that you mentioned above and ask how he can make amends. Anything less than that will be him just saying, "Please stop being mad at me," and that's no change at all. That's the perfect way to describe it. I spent so much time and energy on him. It took up so much of my headspace, and then I reached the point where I was just so done, and I stopped giving him that energy and headspace. I was still aware of it at all, but I mourned the fact he was already not a real part of my life anymore, and never could be again after everything. Not the a-hole. Some people realize way too late that they have screwed up a relationship. Sorry for all the hurt you have experienced. The very best revenge is living well, so when you go out in life, do just that. Be successful in whatever way matters to you most. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to discuss my stepfather's will with my siblings and the fact I was right and he wasn't my dad? The father of my siblings died 11 months ago. He had been married to my mom since I was 4, but he never considered me his kid or treated me like his own. He told me himself when I was a child that he was not my father, and that my dad was some a-hole who walked out on my mom when she told him she was pregnant with me. He said if I ever wanted a father, I needed to track him down, but I shouldn't expect him to step up. He made it clear that he wanted his own kids. My mom and him had 3 kids together. There's an 8 to 11 year age gap between me and them, and they always believed we were full siblings. My mom never corrected them, and their father never realized they believed that. When they were all 12 and older, I sat them down and told them we had different fathers. I had wanted to tell them before, but they were kind of petulant kids, and I knew I'd be wasting my energy trying to convince them. When I explained it, I even showed them my birth certificate as proof. They didn't believe me and had all these excuses. When I pointed out the difference in how he treated us, they said it was just because I was the oldest. My mom died 5 years ago. Her husband became ill after her death, and my siblings and I had a big fight because I refused to contribute to or help with the care of their father. They hated me for it and said I was taking the difference in treatment out on him, claiming it was known that older kids have it differently. They told me that if it was more "he's not my dad" BS, that I needed to get the heck over it and accept that we're full siblings. Now that he's gone, they have finally accepted the truth, because he left me nothing in his will. He left very strict instructions that I get nothing because I'm not his child. My siblings are in their 20s now and I'm in my 30s, married with kids. It doesn't bother me that he left me nothing. I knew from a young age to expect nothing. I had accepted that if he outlived my mom, that would be it for me. I cared for him as much as he cared for me, and his death has made no difference in my life. Now, after all the crap my siblings have thrown at me, they want us to talk about it. Not only about the situation, but also about the will. I refused. I told them I wasn't going to rehash all this again. They were free to discuss it with each other, but since they hadn't apologized to me yet, I could assume they didn't feel bad about it, and I didn't need any more fighting with them. They accused me of never giving them a real chance to understand. I told them they had been so quick to shut down the truth and accused me of being petty and unable to accept reality because I was bitter. I said I had accepted long ago that their father would have been happier if I didn't exist or wasn't around. I don't need to hold their hands through a truth that ultimately has nothing to do with them. They think I should be more open. Maybe I should be. So I wanted to ask, am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. They're old enough to start off with an apology if they want to initiate a talk with you. No apology means they're still not acknowledging or taking accountability for how they reacted when you told them the truth countless times. The fact that they only want to talk about it now that the will is out shows their intentions aren't as innocent as they might claim. Feels like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I'm deeply hurt by how you were treated in your childhood though. Was your mom ever aware of how your stepdad treated you? My mom was aware. I'm not sure if she was aware of everything, but she was aware of the things he said to me about not being my dad, and she knew he never spent time with me. And she never spoke up for you? I don't know how you dealt with it all those years. Did she leave any inheritance for you? I'm sorry if I'm intruding. You don't have to reply if you're not comfortable speaking about your mom. I got nothing. It all went to him, and now my siblings get it from both parents.